to now, your interaction with the audience, the confidence. I think this has been my favorite performance of you so far.
What started as a meteoric rise soon took a dark and unforeseen turn. Right now, her health has become the top priority. It was a turn of events so powerful, it moved even Simon Cowell, known as the industry's toughest critic, to tears on live television. What happened to this rare, once-in-a-generation talent? And why did it strike such a deep chord with Simon? Join us as we delve into the rise, the unraveling, and the moment that left both Simon Cowell and the world in stunned silence. The rise of a star. Courtney Hadwin's journey didn't begin with red carpets or the flash of paparazzi cameras. It started quietly, in the seaside town of Hartlepool, nestled in the northeast of England. Life there was slow and steady, measured by the shifting tides rather than headlines. Within a modest brick house, something extraordinary was beginning to take shape, though no one could see it just yet. Inside that humble home, music was always in the air. Vinyl records spun with Etta James, CDs played Janis Joplin, and Courtney's father often hummed as he did the dishes. For Courtney, music wasn't just background noise, it was her escape, her expression, her way of rising above the ordinary. Her mother's singing often blended with the records playing through the rooms, creating a musical thread that ran through her childhood. But it was her father's love for the greats, like James Brown, that left the deepest impression. Courtney wasn't a child who sought the spotlight. She was quiet, often described as shy or reserved by teachers. But beneath her stillness lay something profound, an emotional depth that was invisible until she opened her mouth to sing. Music became her voice, her outlet, her lifeline. The songs she listened to weren't just entertainment, they were her bridge to a bigger world. When she sang alone in her bedroom, she transformed. The quiet girl from Hartlepool disappeared, replaced by a powerful presence channeling the energy of the legends who inspired her. No one in Hartlepool suspected that a star was quietly being born. Life there was peaceful and unchanged by fame. Yet behind closed doors, Courtney was undergoing a transformation. Headphones in, lights dimmed, and mirror fogged with nervous breath, she rehearsed, not for an audience, but to satisfy something within. Every note wasn't just sung, it was owned. She wasn't memorizing lyrics, she was feeling them. Her voice, rich with soul and grit, carried emotions far beyond her age, heartbreak, hope, and freedom. Influenced by blues, soul, and classic rock, she didn't sound like a young girl learning to sing. She sounded like someone who had lived the songs she sang. Her parents began to notice not just the power of her voice, but the conviction in her performance, the way she became completely absorbed in the music. Courtney didn't sing to impress. She sang to connect. She wanted others to feel with her, hurt with her, breathe with her. Applause didn't matter, emotion did. And while she never sought fame, fame had begun to seek her. Her talent was impossible to overlook. It was the kind of voice that made people pause mid-step. The kind that would leave audiences breathless and eventually bring Simon Cowell to tears. Because sometimes stars don't explode into existence, they burn quietly until the world finally sees them shine. The golden moment. Well, it's time for you guys to check her out. This is her shot at the semi-finals. Here's Courtney Hadwin. When she nervously stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage in 2018, hardly anyone knew her name. But that was all about to change. In just 90 electrifying seconds, under intense pressure and the gaze of millions watching live and at home, Courtney stood. A teenage girl stood nervously, her voice trembling as she introduced herself to the judges. At first glance, she seemed like just another shy contestant with a decent voice. But inside Courtney, there was something untamed, something fierce and volcanic waiting to erupt. Beneath her quiet presence simmered a powerful energy, one no one, not even Simon Cowell, expected. As the first notes of Otis Redding's Hard to Handle echoed through the arena, Courtney let it all out. In a heartbeat, everything changed. Her transformation was so sudden, so intense, it felt almost otherworldly. Her body moved with wild rhythm, channeling decades of soul, swagger, and raw emotion into that one performance. Her raspy growl burst forth like a surge of electricity, stunning the room into silence before igniting a thunderous reaction. This wasn't just a performance, it was a release, a musical possession. What people witnessed wasn't carefully choreographed or polished, it was pure, unfiltered emotion. The judges were blown away. The crowd was in awe, then erupted. Howie Mandel, recognizing the raw magic before him, didn't hesitate. He slammed the golden buzzer. The moment exploded into a downpour of shimmering gold confetti. Backstage, her family cried tears of joy. On stage, Courtney stood frozen in disbelief, eyes wide, hands shaking, transformed. This wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a declaration. Courtney Hadwin wasn't simply another voice, she was a force. A soul seemingly summoned for the stage. Even Simon Cowell, known for his restraint, was left speechless. He had just witnessed the kind of performance that's remembered for years, not just for how it sounded, but for how it made people feel. In that moment of golden glory, Courtney didn't just earn the world's attention, she earned something far rarer, Simon's respect. And one day, it would be that very memory that moved him to tears. Transition to fame. In the weeks that followed, Courtney's life changed at lightning speed, headlines, interviews, viral fame. She was caught in the whirlwind of modern celebrity. But behind the scenes, the transition was anything but smooth. Fame isn't just about being noticed, it's about being redefined. And for Courtney, staying true to herself became a daily battle. In an industry built on predictability, she was an outlier. Executives didn't know where to place her. She didn't fit into the neat boxes of pop or mainstream dance music. Courtney was gritty blues, emotional rawness, and unfiltered power. That made her hard to market. Some industry insiders pushed for changes, tone down the growl, soften the edge, pick safer songs. But they missed the point. Her voice was her identity. Changing it meant erasing what made her unforgettable. And Courtney refused to compromise. It wasn't easy. Social media brought love and praise, but also criticism. She was too much for some. And beneath the spotlight, she was still a teenager trying to grow up with the world watching. Amid the chaos, Courtney held tight to her anchor, music. She returned to the songs that shaped her, started writing her own, and played small venues where authenticity mattered more than image. Slowly, she began carving her own path, not by industry standards, but by her own. Courtney Hadwin never wanted to be a packaged product. She wanted to be an artist. And in a world obsessed with flawlessness, she reminded everyone what real truly looked and sounded like. Even Simon Cowell, the man who first saw her ignite the stage, came to recognize the quiet battle she was fighting. And in time, it would be that same inner strength, that unwavering authenticity, that made what came next even more powerful. Courtney's rise to fame came with heartbreaking challenges. The momentum she gained from America's Got Talent wasn't just rapid, it was explosive. Practically overnight, the girl who once sang barefoot in her bedroom, using a hairbrush as a microphone, found herself performing on international stages, her voice resonating in homes around the world. But with each spotlight came a shadow, one that silently trails behind fame. Instead of a steady climb, success felt more like an escalator moving at breakneck speed. Courtney had no choice but to keep her balance or risk falling. Every flawless performance, every picture-perfect smile brought more than applause, it brought heavy expectations. She had been declared a prodigy, and to many, prodigies don't evolve. They're seen as perfect just the way they are. In 2019, her EP The Cover Sessions marked her official recording debut. The project showcased her depth, maturity, and the powerful voice that had captivated so many. Yet behind the praise, it boxed her into an image that no longer felt true to who she was becoming. That same year, her return to AGT, the Champions reignited excitement, as fans welcomed her back like nothing had changed, as if she were frozen in time, untouched by growth or self-reflection. But behind the scenes, Courtney was evolving. Her musical tastes had broadened beyond Janis Joplin's gritty soul and James Brown's explosive energy. She was drawn to alternative sounds, indie influences, layered production, and, most importantly, writing original songs that told her own story. Unfortunately, the industry didn't want change. It wanted familiarity, the same vintage-sounding girl who could turn a stage into 1968. This created a silent internal conflict. Outwardly, Courtney played along, giving interviews, wearing the expected outfits, and singing the expected songs. Inwardly, she was stretched thin by the tension between who she was expected to be and who she was becoming. She feared that straying from the formula might cost her relevance, but sticking with it made her feel invisible. It was like wearing a costume she had long since outgrown. Balancing this act was draining. Too much originality, and she risked losing fans. Too much conformity, and she risked losing herself. For a teenager still discovering her identity, this duality was more than difficult, it was emotionally overwhelming. She didn't just want to sing, she wanted to create, to tell her story, and to be seen as a complete artist, not just a nostalgic act. Few recognized it at the time, but this quiet battle was already taking a toll. One that would soon catch up with her, and even move Simon Cowell, the man who first saw her brilliance, to tears. The unexpected setback. By early 2020, Courtney's career was at full speed. Her calendar was filled with what most young artists could only dream of, recording sessions with top producers, non-stop interviews, live shows, and endless photo shoots. On the surface, she was an unstoppable force heading towards stardom. But beneath the surface, she was falling apart. Sleep was a luxury. Days blurred into nights, weeks disappeared into a haze of obligations. There was no pause button, only relentless pressure to perform. Even her voice, once a source of freedom and joy, began to feel like a weight. Before going on stage, she would feel anxious, her throat would tighten, her hands would shake. She wondered if anyone would notice. Worse, she wondered if anyone would care. Most painfully of all, she felt completely alone. Welcome to America's Got Talent. How are you? A little bit nervous. That's okay. The people around her, managers, stylists, publicists, were focused on the brand, not the person. Every decision felt strategic, never compassionate. She felt like a product. Her exhaustion, her thoughts, her fears, none of it fit the image being crafted for her. She smiled for the cameras, but in the mirror, she saw someone disappearing. Then, in a twist no one expected, the world came to a standstill. The COVID-19 pandemic hit like a tidal wave, shutting down concerts, halting travel, and closing studios. Everything stopped. For many in the entertainment industry, it was a disaster. Before the pandemic, over 450,000 people worked in the US film and recording industries. For Courtney, however, it was oddly freeing. At first, the quiet felt strange. There were no stages, no make-up chairs, no instructions, just stillness. And in that stillness, something important began to rise. Courtney realized how deeply tired she was, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She was simply existing. In the absence of a spotlight, she found clarity. She picked up her guitar, not for anyone else, but for herself. She wrote in her journal. She created songs at 2 a.m. because she felt something, not because a deadline loomed. Slowly, she reconnected with the girl who once sang for the joy of it. There were no cameras, no expectations, just music, pure and personal. Through this, she confronted a hard truth: she had never been given the space to grow up. The industry that shaped her moved fast, demanded faster, and rarely stopped to ask how she felt. The pandemic didn't fix everything, but it gave her a glimpse of what true fulfillment might look like if she was brave enough to chase it on her own terms. But with clarity came a cost. Because once you experience authenticity, going back to performance feels impossible. Something had to change, not later, but now. And as Courtney stood on the edge of that change, ready to redefine her journey, she had no idea that the most difficult chapter was still to come, one that would move everyone, including Simon Cowell, in ways they never expected. Clarity doesn't always shield you from what comes next. As the world reopened and life regained its relentless pace, so too did the demands of Courtney Hadwin's career. The quiet freedom she experienced during lockdown quickly gave way to the same pressures that had once drained her: only now, they felt more intense than ever. Then, the unexpected happened. A deeply troubling development sent shockwaves through Courtney's fan base and the entertainment industry at large. Rumors began spreading across social media and entertainment forums. Courtney Hadwin had been hospitalized. Beyond the initial shock, however, details were scarce. No official statement was released, no sources came forward. Just a growing sense that something was seriously wrong. As hours passed without any clarification, speculation grew rapidly. Some believed she had collapsed from pure exhaustion, burnout brought on by years of non-stop schedules, red carpet events, media appearances, and unseen behind-the-scenes work. Others whispered about emotional strain, the toll of perfectionism, relentless expectations, and the pressure of living in the public eye. Some rumors went darker, hinting at fainting spells or breakdowns caused by the overwhelming need to maintain a flawless image. The Courtney fans had grown to admire had vanished without explanation. Her once lively social media accounts went silent, no posts, no updates, no reassurances. In that silence, concern deepened into fear. For her fans, it was heartbreaking. For industry insiders, it was a grim reminder of how quickly the glamorous facade of fame can shatter. In an industry that thrives on constant visibility, sudden absence often signals decline. Courtney's disappearance was more than just shocking, it was alarming, because no one knew why. Had the weight of fame, endless scrutiny, and constant performance finally become too much? For someone who once seemed untouchable, the situation was a brutal reminder that behind the spotlight stands a real, vulnerable person. Courtney Hadwin was no longer just a rising star, she was a young woman in crisis. And even the strongest names in the industry felt the impact, including Simon Cowell. A rare emotional moment. Simon Cowell is no stranger to heartbreak in the music world. Over the years, he's seen countless bright stars fade under the weight of fame and personal battles. But Courtney Hadwin wasn't just another contestant, she was a prodigy. A young powerhouse wrapped in innocence, with a voice that echoed legends. From her very first nervous steps on the Got Talent stage, Simon saw something extraordinary in her, an untamed soul, a rare magic you can't create, only witness. So when news broke that Courtney had entered a dark chapter of her life, Simon didn't respond like a typical producer. He felt it personally. Then came a moment no one expected. During a routine live broadcast about the future of talent shows, Simon's demeanor noticeably shifted. Gone was his confident, composed expression, he appeared subdued, even shaken. When Courtney's condition came up, he began with carefully measured words. But soon, his voice faltered. His posture slumped. Emotion took over. "I've watched her grow," he said, voice cracking and eyes glistening. "She had something I don't think I've ever seen before. And to see her going through this, it's just heartbreaking." That rare moment, Simon Cowell breaking into tears on live TV, sent the world into shock. "The most important thing is your well-being, your health, and your recovery," he added sincerely. "The world can wait." For audiences used to seeing him as the tough, unshakable judge, the vulnerability was both jarring and powerful. He wasn't putting on a show. He wasn't selling an album. He was simply a man terrified of losing someone he believed in, not to career failure, but to life itself. More than anything, Simon's words weren't about music anymore. He wasn't concerned with record sales or chart numbers. He was concerned for her, her life, her soul. "She's more than a performer," he said, wiping away a tear. "She's someone with a light inside her. And that light deserves to shine again." The clip went viral in hours. Fans worldwide flooded social media with messages of love and support for Courtney, and with newfound admiration for Simon. Beneath his usual armor, people saw something real, a man who genuinely cared, not just about Courtney's gift, but about her as a person. In that rare, unscripted moment, Simon reminded everyone, including himself, that even the strongest hearts can break when someone they care about is hurting. Moving forward. In the months that followed the public concern surrounding Courtney Hadwin's health, attention began shifting from her career trajectory to her personal recovery. With reduced media exposure and fewer public obligations, Courtney was finally given something she hadn't had in years: space to breathe. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't pressured to be extraordinary. The constant need to perform faded just enough to let her find herself again. But the world didn't forget her, not even close. Her fans stood by her, flooding her online platforms with encouragement. Behind the scenes, industry figures quietly discussed her potential comeback, hopeful she would rise again. But for Courtney, this new chapter wasn't about reclaiming fame. It was about healing and telling her truth. During her time away from the spotlight, she continued writing music. For her, it was more than a job. It was therapy. Songwriting became her way to process pain, rediscover joy, and take control of her story. Simon Cowell, who had publicly shown emotional support, reportedly stayed in touch. Unlike many who quickly move on to the next trending artist, Simon remained a consistent presence, not as a judge or producer, but as a mentor and friend. "Take your time," he would say. "The world can wait." Courtney's circle grew smaller, but stronger. These weren't just fans or colleagues anymore, they were believers. People who loved her not because she was famous, but because they saw the fire inside her. They gave her the strength and space to re-enter the studio, not to recreate old magic, but to forge something entirely new. As Courtney matured, so did her music. Reports of new material suggest a more grounded, emotionally raw sound, reflecting her journey and the lessons she's learned. Talk of an upcoming album and a public return has started to circulate. Today, Courtney Hadwin is no longer defined solely by her America's Got Talent days. She is seen as a resilient young artist navigating the complicated world of early fame, mental health, and artistic reinvention. Her journey has been unpredictable, but deeply human. Whether she returns to mainstream stardom or pursues a quieter, more independent path, one thing is certain: her story is far from over. The world is still watching. Still listening. Still waiting. Will the pressure of fame define her? Or will she rise above it? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.